All right, hi. It's Sunday afternoon, a little before 4. I'm in one of the classrooms at Bay Path, and I've done a lot of magic marking on the wall, on the whiteboards. And wanted to walk through sort of like an overview or a consolidation of what we've been learning so far in the course in order to better help you with your final project, and to see how all the pieces fit together and hopefully help you. I know I got an email from one of you at least about how I need to grade your paper. Yes, I need to grade some of the papers that came in this week, and I'll do that tomorrow. But I thought actually that this would be more helpful to the class as a whole. So I've taken, my 2 or 3 hours today on Sunday to, do this part. Hopefully it's useful to you. Okay, so this may be a little long, it may be a little winded. Bear with me, okay? Okay, so if we start back at the beginning, in chapter 1, yeah, there we go. This is page 20, chapter 1. And the main point that we want to make about evaluations is that, and this is a quote, the guy says, "We have emphasized that the role of evaluation is to provide answers to questions about a program that will be useful and will actually be utilized. The point is fundamental to evaluation. Its purpose is to inform action." And then in the summary of that first chapter on page 28, he says, program evaluation is intended to be useful for improving programs and informing social action aimed at ameliorating social problems. Okay, why do I go back there to start? Because as you do your final project and you're thinking about what you're doing, remember that all of this is geared toward actually making improvements in the program. And so when you're thinking not only about, what type of information might be useful, you have to think about, well, who is this evaluation for? Who are the power brokers, the stakeholders within and outside the organization that can actually make changes in the program to improve it so that the outcomes of program recipients, service recipients, and the social problem that is to be ameliorated, so that those people can actually take the action to have the intended outcome, improvements in the social problem. And that's why at the beginning of, let's see, where are we here? I'm sorry, I don't have the chapter there, but in the first chapter or two, Rossi makes such an important point about making sure that you talk to the stakeholders. And so the notion is, if you want there to be change in the program because of the evaluation, you need to understand which stakeholder, you have to identify which stakeholders have power to take action. And then in the second point here, there, whoop, the fickle finger of fate here. I feel like Soupy Sales and Fang on his old TV show. How can the evaluation be designed so that the powerful stakeholders will use the evaluation results for positive action to ameliorate the defined social problem? Okay, and so with that in mind, if that's your, knowing that that's part of your challenge, then you have to obviously have this conversation with stakeholders. And Rossi goes into this in depth in chapter 3 on page 88, and he says that there are really 3 important questions then that you want to answer in your discussion with these stakeholders. One, oh, can I do it? I'm having trouble. There. Why is an evaluation needed? Okay. Secondly, what are the program goals and its objectives? And third, what are the most important questions for the evaluation to answer? Okay. And again, as you think about your evaluation, if you think about what it is that's the most important to understand, here, I'll talk at you, to understand, then you need to really be clear. You need to make sure then that your evaluation and the questions and the information you're gathering zoom right in on those most important questions and the most important information to glean from your research in order to answer, uh, uh, in order to meet the needs for why you're having an evaluation. Um, okay, so that the evaluation serves its purpose. Okay, and the one thing I have there on the side, right, is this over here, if you can see that, evaluation creep. And this is like, mission creep or anything else creep. You plan a vacation and you want to figure out where you want to go, and then, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we took this side trip here? Oh, yeah, I'd really like to go there, and da-da-da-da-da. And before you know it, all your time's filled up, and sometimes all you've done the whole trip is run around, seeing everything in the world, but not spending any time actually enjoying any of it. Well, that's vacation creep. But mission creep, we all know that, right? Where we start at one place and then we think about other possibilities and we move out and out and out. And it's like when you design a survey. Have you ever designed a survey by committee? You get 10 people in a room, and you get each of them have 3 different questions they want to ask, all supposedly related to the one thing you're really trying to answer. And before you know it, you got a gazillion questions, and there's nothing really focused on what it is you want to do. And so, again, I challenge you in your evaluation and your design to ask questions that are really important and really relate to the need for the evaluation and for the information you're really trying to get. Okay, that'll be the most impactful, so that you can change and improve the program to better address the social problem you're trying to address. Okay, ameliorate that social problem. Okay, we're going to come back to that because it is the theme of the course. Okay, so now we're going to come over here, and while I was just in chapter 3 on page 8, I want to take you back to the very beginning. Here, we'll put it here. Maybe it's better. Yeah, there, it's better there. All right? Okay, so this is page 3, and this is what Rossi says on page 3 at the very beginning of his book. He says, evaluators use social research methods to study, appraise, and help improve social programs, including, right, that's what we talked about over there, right? Over there, right, where the purpose of evaluation is action that leads to amelioration or better amelioration of the social problem you're trying to address. But the social research methods you use to help improve social programs include identifying, let's see if we can see this, maybe I'll move this closer. Oh, look at that. He's the one-armed professor. Soundness of the program's diagnosis of the social problems they address. That's one. Another way they do it is by looking at studying, appraising, and helping improve the way programs are conceptualized and, number 3, implemented. And then a 4th way, they study, appraise, and help improve social programs by looking at the outcomes they achieve. And then a 5th way that they study, appraise, and help improve social programs is by looking at their efficiency. Okay? Now, that's certainly a lot of different things that you can do. A lot of different things you can do when you are thinking about evaluating a program, right? And so this takes us back then to this notion that I had over here. How can the evaluation be designed so that the powerful stakeholders will use the evaluation results for positive action to ameliorate the defined social problem? Yeah, I did that right. Okay, and so the beginning parts, in order to decide which of these aspects of a program to study, and to so that the evaluation can be designed so that powerful stakeholders will use it, then you have to, yes, think about a number of different things. And Rossi talks about these in basically it's chapter 2, I believe, about stakeholders. Who are they? Whoops. Stakeholders, who are they, what they want. The program stages. In other words, if it's a brand new program, you really can't talk about its efficiency very well or the outcomes they achieve because it hasn't even started yet. Obvious. But that's on page 40, Exhibit 2E. And then he has a discussion about resources. And as you're obviously finding out in your, in your exercises and in trying to do this evaluation final project, you're finding that, oh my God, it takes time, effort, and manpower, person power, to be able to do this stuff. And so resources are always an issue in thinking about which of these sorts of areas of a program or aspects of a program you're actually going to study. Okay? And so when you've kind of thought about the things you can't think about, the aspects of the program that you can study in order to help to make it improve, and you think about the considerations, stakeholder needs, program stage, resource constraints, and you kind of use your evaluation expertise and knowledge in how to use and what's possible, the art, although I poo-pooed this in my opening video, the art of trying to balance these various things, you get to understanding that there is a hierarchy. I'm going to move this back now. Put it down on the table. Move the table in. Yes, now you can look at it there. How are we doing? Yeah, okay, we're doing okay, I guess. That there is a sort of logic to what you can really do as it relates to the evaluation hierarchy, right? And the exhibit is on page 80 of the book, and it's again in chapter 2 or 3, but page 80, and he has the hierarchy there, right? And he basically goes through the logic that you can't really do a stage 5 analysis unless you've done a stage 4, and you can't do a stage 4 unless you've done a stage 3, and you can't do a stage 3 unless you've done 2, you can't do 2 unless you've done 1. Okay, so let's just talk about each for a moment. We've spent time talking on each, but just to make sure again, you really need to start at the basis. And in other words, you need to know that the first most elementary would be assessment of need. If you don't know that there's a real need that needs to be addressed, then why are you doing the program, right? Don't chase the money just because it's there. Make sure that there is a need to be addressed, right? And that was in chapter 4. It's kind of a boring chapter, but he goes on and on and on about it. And then the second thing is that if you do know the need, and I talk about the need being the alpha and the omega, it's your starting point. Oh, you can't see that in the light, can you? Here you go. Assessment of need, alpha and omega, chapter 4, right? You need to start with identifying the need, and hopefully at the end you come back to say, oh yeah, I actually did solve it, and I did it in a cost-effective manner. That's number 5 down at the bottom here, but we'll get there. Okay, so Then we have assessment of program design and theory. Again, part of chapter 4, the logic model is chapter 5. And so if you know what the need is, then the next step is to think about, okay, how can I do something? How can I provide a treatment, an intervention of some sort that will in fact address the social need? Okay, and I am going to hold this up here because it does seem to be far away. Okay, and this assessment of the design and theory is basically to say, okay, does it make sense that the treatment that I'm trying to provide will actually solve the need? And related to that then is this logic model, right? And I know that I've had some discussions back and forth with some of you about how detailed that logic model needs to be. But the point here is that you want to make sure that there's a connection between the need, the stated treatment you're going to provide, and a change, hopefully an improvement in the social problem. And if you can conceptualize your program in that way, then that's really great. And the parents as teachers case study had an amazing logic model, maybe overdone as we've discussed, but an amazing schematic that went from identified need, its causes, a treatment, and hopefully a change in the outcomes. Okay? And so when you know what it is you're going to try to do, then the next piece, the next logical place to go is your assessment of program process and implementation. And that is, oops, there we go. There. And that is covered in chapter 6. And it was addressed in the case study about Jumpstart, the college mentoring program, and how they expanded over time, and how they tried to make sure that the program that they envisioned was actually the program being implemented. And so that's the key task of the assessment of program process and implementation. That assessment is to determine, is the program operating as intended? And there's really two major areas there you want to make sure are working right. One is that the service utilization by the client is actually occurring as intended. You know, are the clients showing up? Are they making use of the information or the treatment as intended, etc.? And that's discussed on page 183 to 191. And then the other aspect there is the operational functions, meaning is the agency or the provider of the treatment actually doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is it acting appropriately or not? And that's discussed in detail on 191 to 200. And so those are pretty straightforward, actually. But then we got to this part, and I think this is, in my own mind, where the course maybe got too challenging in the details of the Rossi book. But let's just look at it. The fourth thing you want to do, if you know that the program's being implemented as designed, and that you don't have, quote, implementation failure, where it is not being implemented as designed, then you want to think about, okay, am I getting the outcomes or the impact that I hoped I would? Going back here to the logic model, need, treatment, social problem. Well, the need's there, the treatment is being implemented as intended. Am I getting the impact? Okay, again, this is not about outputs. It's not about how many people showed up for the training. It's what change did those people experience because they showed up for the treatment, right? It's the change in the client or the social problem, not what the program operationally provided them. I think I made a point of this in the last discussion. Let's see if I can find it here really quick. Oh, baby. Can I do it quickly? Can I do it quickly? Can I do it quickly? Oh, damn, 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 damn. Damn, damn, doo doo doo. James Taylor song. No, I'm missing it. But I said it in the in my weekly video, I think this week or last. Okay, so that then takes us to talk a little bit about program outcomes and change in the social problem or the client that you're hoping to get. And this is on, I'm sorry, I'm walking away from the video here. This is on page, oh, there it is, wonderful. 207, it's Exhibit 7A in Chapter 7, right? And basically, what we have here is, you know, over time, we're going to try to measure good outcomes, okay? Whether they're increasing, decreasing. And hopefully, we get something like this, that it's good outcomes, right? That there is, in fact, an increase in our observation of the good outcomes. But as Sarah mentioned in one of the early discussion forums on this topic, she said, well, how can I be sure that the positive change I'm seeing or the negative change I'm seeing is a consequence of the treatment, is a consequence of the problem? And so, yes, we have this question or possibility that because of simple maturation, the problem is getting better or the client is getting better, right? It's very true with juvenile delinquents. They sometimes age out of the problem. In other words, you'll have a lot of kids who are in their early, mid teens. They steal stuff, they do pranks, they, you know, whatever. They just test in limits because that's what teenagers do. And so when they get to 22, 23, there's a natural improvement in their behavior. Some people just continue on and, you know, they're lifelong criminals. But a lot of times maturation alone solves the problem. Something like kids, really early childhood kids as well, you know, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, you know, they're learning on their own amazing things all the time. So if they go to kindergarten, does all the improvement that they have over the course of the year attributable to the good work the teacher did? No. Teacher may help it out, but not always. So you have this issue of maturation sometimes, and then, you know, maturation is just one of a gazillion other factors that might come involved to either make the good outcomes improve or the bad outcomes, you know, become more observable. And you get this all the time with employment and training programs, right? We want people to go through the program. We want them to find a job. We want them to become self-sufficient. Well, you can have the best program in the world, but if the employment picture is going down the tubes, if the economy is tanking like it did in 2008 and we were losing 600, 700, 800,000 jobs per month, then no job program is going to do nothing good for those people. You know, they're not going to get the job. All right. So, okay. So what we're really trying to figure out then is this net effect, which in the book they talk about being the program effect. Okay. It's not the absolute effect, the absolute change in how much of the good outcome we've seen. You know, it's not from here to here. Because we had other indicators here that, you know, we're going to be in play. And so conceptually, all that stuff in chapters, let's see, 7, 8, 9, and 10, all it was methodologies to try to say, how do we actually capture this and not inadvertently capture all these other good things too that are adding to the good effects of the program. And yes, we talked about random experimental design. That's what chapter 8 was about. And chapter 9, we talked about the quasi-experimental designs. And basically, all you need to know there is that experimental design, if you can do it, where you randomly have identical people as a group, you have identical looking groups over here who are the control, and an equal looking group over here. In total, who are going to receive the treatment, and you think that they are in total the same because you randomly put people here and you randomly put people there, and so the quirkiness of any individual, balances out because you got enough quirky people over here, enough quirky people over here, and then ultimately you have, an average that looks the same, the bell curve, right? Quirky people. But if you did it randomly, then your control group looks exactly like your treatment group. Okay, so that's the deal with the random experimental design. But we know that we can't always have random experimental design, so we fall back on other stuff, and there's some very complicated stuff or challenging stuff there dealing with statistics and probability there, meaning in these chapters 8, 9, and then in 10. No, not in 10. Yeah, chapter 10 that we're reading this week about the nuances of all these calculations. So anyway, so we know experimental design is the best, but we can't always get that. So we do other ways of trying to estimate the other factors or the maturation that either adds to or detracts from the absolute numbers, improvement or negative, that we're seeing in our programs. But we can't always do that, so a lot of times we just rely on pre-test, post-test, right? We see what the group is doing before the test, before the treatment starts. We look at them after the treatment. And while that's not fabulous, if you're really a researcher, and it's not fabulous if you're running an employment and training program at the same time that the economy is tanking, you do what you can. Okay? All right. And then, so that's the impact study. My God, I know this is 27 minutes already, and I apologize. And if you've shut me off, well, I'm sorry that I couldn't do a more interesting job for you. And so if you have been able to identify the need, you think you have a plausible program design and theory related in a logic model that captured in a logic model that relates need to treatment to social problems, and you're confident that in fact your program that's contained in the logic model has been implemented as intended. Clients are using it as you had hoped. The provider of treatment is doing what they were supposed to do. And you think you have found an impact. I should say here, right? That's what the Harlem Children's Zone was all about. This need for getting numbers and identifying impact and outcome. Then the last thing, the most hierarchical study you might want to do is a assessment of program cost and efficiency, right? And this is what we studied last week in chapter 11. And the big question, and we had the Robin Hood Foundation case study here. And so the big question here then is simply an issue of the promise and challenge of reducing everything, cost and benefits, to dollars. And we do that to try to compare apples to oranges, different programs, different types of social programs dealing with different social problems, but maybe more realistically, comparing Gale apples to Honeycrisp apples to Macintosh apples, or put more differently, comparing the effectiveness of different job training programs or job training programs in addressing unemployment and chronic poverty. Okay, so so those are the 5 studies that we have, types of studies that we have studied in the course, and now something that Rossi talks about back in chapter 3 then is thinking about, okay, if those are the 5 types of programs you want to, or types of evaluations you want to undertake in order to study these 5 aspects of any social program, you need to make sure that your questions and your information gathering, in fact, gets the information you need as it relates to each of your 5 possible evaluations. And so the question is, what are the appropriate questions? And actually, Rossi talks about this back on 81 to 86, right? And again, it goes then back to, well, what's your purpose in the evaluation? What are the most important questions for the evaluation to answer? Right? I'm way back at the beginning now. Right? And so make sure you ask pointed questions to get you reliable, valid, and sensitive information. And Rossi talks about this on page 219, 220, 220, 221. And basically, to be reliable questions, you want them to be unambiguous to the respondent. You want to make sure that you get the same results when the response is indicating the same thing. Okay? You want to make sure it's valid. Your questions are valid in that it really is getting you the information that you think it will get you. Right? If the guy says 5 on the measurement and you think 5 means he's really satisfied with X, you need to make sure that he's not really satisfied with Y. Okay? And then lastly, it needs to be sensitive. In other words, will the questions give you nuanced answers or nuanced information that's fine enough to capture important distinctions? Okay? All right, so that's 220. So I guess that brings me to the end of my tirade. I don't know if it was a tirade, but I don't know how helpful it really was. But if you made it this far, I should give you extra credit because it's 33 minutes. I think this is the longest one I've ever done. So, but the point being, remember, try to make sure, try to see how the different parts and pieces of the course kind of fit together to lead you to this end project. Think about what it is you want to accomplish, why you want to accomplish it, and then think about, okay, if these are my goals and objectives for the evaluation, how do I design it? What type of evaluation do I want to do? Need, program theory, logic model, small letters, implementation, impact, efficiency. How did I get to 5? 6, there are only 5. Anyway, right? Need, theory and assessment, logic model, implementation, impact, and efficiency. All right? And then make sure that the questions you are asking and the information that you are gathering is appropriate then for answering the key question that's related to each type of evaluation that should have been chosen based upon what you wanted the evaluation to do for you, right? why is an evaluation needed, and what's the most important questions the evaluation has to answer. Okay, and if you can try to make that connection running throughout all your decisions, I think you'll end up in the right spot. So I will look at your papers tomorrow, and hopefully this has been helpful. 35 minutes later, I don't know. Take care. Always call too. And you can harass me, not harass me, but complain about not having the papers done today. I will do them tomorrow.